Um, we're here to welcome Nick and Jill, and Shamsi will give an introduction to them soon. But I just want to read this recording disclaimer first. Please note that this session is being recorded. It may include your likeness and your voice. You have the option of either muting your camera and your microphone or sitting over there if you don't want to be in the recording. But participation implies authorization for Mass Bay to use such likeness and voice on this recording in perpetuity. Thanks. Take it away.
Thank you, Robin. So Jill Kamperides. Sure. Almost got it.
Kamperides. You were close. Closer than most.
We are very honored to have Jill, who is a manager, IT advisory services, lead penetration tester, my goodness, focused on privately held companies and international banking clients at OCD Tech. As the lead of the penetration testing team, she utilizes her deep knowledge of programming and automation through scripting and uses that knowledge to quickly discover misconfigurations in target systems. Jill is also responsible for the OCD Tech phishing platform and oversees the maintenance of weekly client employee security awareness campaigns. Very important. Jill has contributed to the industry through CVE assignments, published articles, and speaking engagement. She, as you saw, has many expertise, penetration testing, IT general controls, vulnerability assessments, employee awareness, and has many certification and memberships, such as BIAC certificate, certified penetration tester, CyberArk trustee level 1, ISACA certificate, InfraGrad, DoD mandatory control unclassified information, and many more. Jill has been with OCD Tech since 2019, and she holds a Bachelor of Arts, which she will tell you all about this, from University of Massachusetts in Boston.
That is correct.
I'm going to continue and try Nick's last name. Nick Pertetuo. Nick joined the team as an intern in 2020 to Students Listen. He joined as intern in 2022 and transitioned to full-time position in 2023. He authored 2 tools to assist in the auditing process over the course of his internship and has since begun his training as a penetration tester. Prior to joining OCD Tech, he worked on a grant-funded web application for the University of North Carolina, Wilmington, and while obtaining his computer science degree. Computer science students listen. So his area of expertise is passport auditing, Office 365 administration, God bless you, penetration testing. So as I mentioned before, he graduated cum laude with Bachelor of Science in Computer Science from University of North Carolina. Thank you both for coming. We are all ears.
Thank you for having us. Thank you, everybody, for attending the road to becoming an ethical hacker. This is by no means a step-by-step of how to get into the career, but more of a first-person perspective of what my story and my road has been like, and Nick's as well. So I think we both have some unorthodox tales to tell of how we landed in this career. And thank you, Shamsi, for the introduction. As Shamsi mentioned, my name is Jill Kamperides. I manage the IT advisory services team at OCD Tech. That position comes with a lot of different tasks and responsibilities, but primarily my responsibility at work is penetration testing, which you may hear referred to as ethical hacking, white hat hacking. It's kind of an umbrella term for what we do. Yeah, penetration testing and leading the pen test team. Our company is OCD Tech. The OCD actually stands for O'Connor and Drew, an accounting firm that we used to be a part of. But we are actually 11 years old at this point. The company was founded in 2012. Our main office is in Braintree, Massachusetts, just about half an hour from here, a little closer if you drive fast. We are not far, but we have employees all over the country and internationally as well. 2 years ago, we opened our second office in Mexico City, which has been very exciting and has led to a lot of travel opportunities too. But our company, we do cybersecurity consulting. So we offer pen testing, which is what my team focuses on, vulnerability assessments, a lot of audit and compliance work, regulatory type work, and privileged access management, which I will get into a little bit because that's how I started. But before jumping into cybersecurity, I want to talk about where I started. And when I was 17 years old, just a teenager in high school, I was hired by GameStop, which is not usually how you connect these dots, but it's really where it all started. I worked in retail, I made minimum wage, I sold video games and rewards cards, and it was fun. I learned how to talk to people because I was just a nervous teenager at the time. But I spent a lot longer than I expected to at GameStop. I stayed there 6 years from the end of high school all the way up to the end of college. And my experience there actually bookends my experience at OCD Tech. As I'm sure you can start to assume, I had very little cybersecurity experience starting out in this role. But over the course of my GameStop career, I tried to go to college because it was the natural next step after high school. I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do, so I applied to a bunch of local universities, was accepted at Suffolk, and started there in 2015. I made the mistake of trying to commute to Suffolk University, straight into the heart of the city every day, which I think is part of what led to my unhappiness in college. I really didn't have a good time the first time around, and it's probably partly because I felt directionless as well. So I really tried college and tried to stick with it at first, but made it into like mid to late October of that first fall semester and was like, I don't want to do this anymore. So I withdrew after the ad drop period, which was a mistake on my part. But I continued to work full-time at GameStop. And that taught me that I didn't want to do retail forever either. So I gave college a second try, and I had always really liked writing. I was good at it in high school. I wrote stories in my free time. I decided to pursue an English degree at UMass Boston with a creative writing concentration. So I took all the classes. I wrote a screenplay in college, tons of short stories, edited for a magazine. I loved it. I really liked writing. And I thought that combined with GameStop experience, it seemed like game writer was going to be a natural convergence for me. So I really explored that for a while and thought I ended up in game writing and game development. I actually started trying to teach myself Unity, the Unity game engine, for a while. And with that, got into computers. So I probably realized a little too late that I was kind of technically apted as well, and tried to add a computer science minor in my third year at UMass Boston, but realized eventually that I wouldn't graduate in time if I stuck with that. It was going to be too many credits. I would have had to put in a fifth year, and I didn't really want to do that either. I also didn't like all of the prerequisites that came with computer science. Learning C was really hard. Calculus was even worse, but the great thing that came out of this is that I learned Python. I took a few introductory Python courses and fell in love with the language, which comes back later. So by the time I had wrapped up college, and this is where GameStop comes back into play, My GameStop manager had actually started at OCD Tech about 6 months before I did. And he said, hey, we have some openings. They're looking for entry-level people. I can get your name to the right place. And I said, sure, I'll give that a shot. Let's see what it's all about. And he did. He sent my name to the right place. And what's funny is that thinking I wanted to do game design, I was actually applying to Rockstar Games at the same time. They had a game tester position open. And I ended up having to choose between the two, which I'm not sure management even knows that, but it came down to taking a shot on one or the other, and I chose OCD Tech. It was local, it was right here in Braintree. I had lived in Whitman all my life, which wasn't very far. I gave it a shot, and I jumped in completely blind as an entry-level IT security analyst. I had no idea what I was doing, and frankly, I was terrified. As I say in this bullet point here, all I knew were video games and grammar, which was the truth. I didn't know what I was getting into. But the role was entry level, and I was placed on the Privileged Access Management team at OCD Tech. That is abbreviated as PAM for short. And the PAM team's responsibility belongs to one of our big clients, where they make sure day in and day out that privileged accounts in this client's environment are supposed to be privileged and are authorized, and that any unauthorized accounts that have privilege and can perform sensitive actions, they make sure those get revoked. So my position was trainable, and I got a ton of on-the-job experience and mentorship from very, very smart people. I worked very closely with one guy for a while who taught me everything I know now about the Linux system, and I'm very grateful to have worked with him, because that's helped me a lot with pen testing, actually. But I was looking at the process one day, and a lot of it was automated, but there was one piece that some of the code didn't actually function on, and you had to log into a server and copy files off and log out for like 5 different systems. I'm like, this is super repeatable. Why am I doing this manually every day? It didn't take very long, but I could automate it, is what I thought. So using the Python I had learned during my attempted computer science minor, I took a shot at automating this process. I wrote code that would log into the systems, copy the files off, and log off. And it worked. I can believe it actually worked, and that I was making the process better. And my manager at the time noticed this and waved over the owner of the company and was like, hey, Mike, check this out. And so there I am with no experience at all, feeling like I don't belong here. I mean, I came from retail and GameStop, and I have the owner looking over my shoulder at the code on my screen, and I'm talking through bit by bit what it does. And I ran it for him and showed how it collected the files, and he was like, this is cool. And I thought that was the end of it, but I didn't know at the time that the pen test team, a whole other half of the company that I had no experience with, had never met before, they were shorthanded and they needed people. And I caught somebody's eye, apparently. So they wanted to transition me to pen testing, which again, I had no experience in. So not long after this, the owner of the company came back to me and said, hey, I've got a proposition for you. Do you want to go to New York City for a week and learn how to become a hacker? And I said, can I get back to you on that? I was again terrified. The only travel I had done was like with my family on family trips. I had never traveled alone. I felt like a kid in this role, and here I'm being offered to go to New York for a week and learn this entirely new skill set. And I talked to the pen test manager at the time and was like, what do you think of this? Should I do this? And he said, you absolutely have to do this training. Nobody will get this opportunity again. It is a once in a lifetime thing. And I said, okay. So I packed a week's worth of clothes and got on the Amtrak and went and stayed in a big fancy hotel in Times Square, just fresh out of college, trying to figure out what I was doing, and sat through a week of class. It was 8 hours a day. They taught the entire pen test process beginning to end, and I learned how to be a hacker. There was a certification that came at the end of that, the GPen certification, which is GIAC, Certified Penetration Tester. I signed up for the exam, took the exam. I ended up getting a 97, and I couldn't believe it. It was just like life-changing, honestly. Came back and started doing pen tests for real with my pen test manager at the time. And the course and the certification was super helpful. Like I came back and knew what he was talking about now, but he taught me so much just from his own experience and the way he did pen tests that I learned a ton of what I know from him also. And then eventually he left the company, maybe just a few months after the fact. So he left. I was the last person there who could possibly do this, and I'm like spiraling, like I can't do this job. I don't know what I'm doing here. It's the whole imposter syndrome thing, you know. Like I had just come from an English degree and retail experience up to, you know, thinking I had learned this stuff, but did I really learn it? And really thought about leaving the company, and I wanted to go work with him and keep learning under him. But at some point or another, I got my head on straight. Went and talked again to the owner of the company and was like, if you think I can do this, I think I can do this. And then I took over the pen test team. And I want to pause briefly and talk about this chart, because it's probably the most beneficial piece of this presentation aside from the storytelling. If nobody has seen this before, it's a map of certifications that you can get in the field. The top of the screen here shows like roughly how cybersecurity is broken up, what kind of, I don't want to say departments there are in cybersecurity, but what you can work in and what you can study. And then on the left side of the screen, it's kind of hard to see from here, but it says beginner at the bottom, intermediate, and expert at the top. And if you start at the beginner level and look across the board, these are all the entry-level certifications that you could possibly get in cybersecurity. Honestly, it's just a matter of Googling them, looking into who teaches them, and picking a course and going for it. The GPen cert they had me take is in the red here, somewhere in the middle, which was very thorough in its teaching. But after taking over the pen test team, things got crazy, honestly, which is really why I couldn't think of a better title for this slide, other than some of the craziness that followed. We started hacking colleges. A few different clients of ours would bring us in to test their network and set us up with a default student account. They say, you're a student now, this is the profile that students would get, all the regular privileges they would have, permissions. See what you can do with it, and what does our network look like from this perspective. And we would actually find vulnerabilities and escalate privileges and put ourselves in positions to eventually like own the network at that point, like compromise privileged accounts and really prove that there's an issue. And we did that for colleges, banks, law firms, auto dealers, nonprofit organizations, government contractors. Those ones were fun. I feel like my eyes definitely saw things they weren't supposed to be seeing for some of those clients. But when you do a pen test, you're not just looking for the issues, but you're trying to prove impact. So we have to put ourselves in the position of an attacker and say, if we got on the network, what would you do next? It's not usually just breaking and you're done. It's you generally want to find a way to make money when you're the bad guy. So we would say, what's the most valuable thing on the network? And it's usually the company's sensitive information. So we would look through networks for things that were interesting, like social security numbers, people's tax returns that we could stumble across, plain text passwords, confidential documents, business sensitive documents, things that a company wouldn't want getting exposed, is what we would look for and what we would find. And it was just crazy that we could actually do it. A big part of the process eventually became phishing as well. And I didn't have any sort of training in phishing, and I wouldn't say you necessarily need training in phishing to be a good social engineer, because what you're really trying to do is just come up with some convincing wording that will actually try and trick somebody into doing something. And that for a while is one of the things I struggled with the most, because we weren't just testing computers and testing networks and technically exploiting things. You actually shift into having an impact on a real person on the other end and trying to fool them into doing something. And that's why I have this bullet point here that says the guilt. I think I definitely held my team back for a while because they would come up with really good phishing emails, and I was like, we can't send this. This is too mean. So I eventually put into place this rule, do no harm, which is if you think that what you're going to send is actually going to negatively impact someone or affect somebody's life or change their day in any way, you're not sending that phishing email, which has been a very good rule of thumb to follow. But ultimately, what I had to keep reminding myself is that the clients were paying us for this service, and they wanted to know who would fall for phishing emails. So we continued. And aside from just the pen testing itself, the more embedded you are in this industry and what it entails, the more you start to think about, you know one thing is vulnerable, but what else could be vulnerable, and how does one thing affect another? So we actually started developing some of our own theories on vulnerabilities and writing some proof of concept code to test stuff that had never been tested before. And at one point, my team and I found an issue that this is like another hour-long talk on its own, so I won't get into it. But we realized it was possible to steal internal password hashes from a company's environment out over the internet and send them to a server we controlled, which was insane the day we got it working. And we wrote up our findings and submitted it as an official vulnerability and got this identifier associated with it, the CVE number. A CVE means Common Vulnerabilities and Exposures, and it's just a unique tracker in InfoSec that gets associated with any vulnerability that exists anywhere. It's just a database of vulnerabilities. So we forever have that number attached to us, which is pretty cool. And aside from that, sometimes during testing, we'll find evidence of prior attacks on our clients' networks. Like we'll break our way onto a system and then find like code that's there that shouldn't be, or script output, and stuff that people would have been doing that are like us that they shouldn't have been doing. And we'll have to go to our client and stop the test and say, you have a problem. There's evidence of another attack. And at that point, we are no longer pen testers, but advisors, which is also really cool because they'll come to us and say, what do we do next? What does this mean? How did you find it? And we point them in the right direction, which usually is getting a forensic firm involved because we don't do that and we are not forensics experts. But we've found more than a few of these over the course of pen testing.
Did you know the source of these attempts?
Not often, no. It's usually pretty hard to figure out where they came from, and a lot of them, by the time we stumbled across them, were old. I had one client who had a database that there was a line in the database that said like backdoor.sh. I'm like, this shouldn't be here. And they said that database used to be internet facing like a year ago, and they had since taken it off the internet. So it had been like that for a year. And at that point, you're lucky if you still have the logs left over that could let you know where that came from. But the job has also given a lot of opportunity for travel. It's split pretty evenly between clients and conferences. Fun, fabulous, shiny Las Vegas is one of them that I've been to a few times now, among others. But as I had mentioned earlier, we opened our second branch in Mexico City and hired pen testers in Mexico City as well that I have had the distinct pleasure of managing. So I've made, I think it's either 5 or 6 trips to Mexico City in the past year to go be in the Mexico office and work with that team and try to learn Spanish, which gets better and better every day slowly. And it's been incredible.
From New York to Mexico City.
Yeah, exactly. I wanted to make sure to include some pictures of the craziness. I spent some time going through my camera roll the other night just to put these in the slide. I'm right at my 20-minute mark, but I want to talk about this one on the top left. That's my manager, Robbie, on the left, and another pen tester, Greg. And these guys are in disguise. They're in costume because one of our clients wanted to test their employees on whether or not they would let unauthorized personnel into their back rooms. So Robbie and Greg put on Robbie's a Comcast technician on the left and Greg is an exterminator on the right. And their job was to walk into this client and talk to the people up front and say, hey, I'm supposed to be here. Can you let me into your back room? But they had a whole script and like fake work orders. And like we had done research ahead of time to find out the right names that should even be on those papers. And Robbie unfortunately got shut down pretty quickly. And the client wasn't the employee he spoke to wasn't super thrilled about it. Greg had a very convincing long talk with a security manager of the property, and it went on for a while, and he actually almost let him stay, but in the end changed his mind and said, I can't allow this, I don't have the solid proof, I'm sorry, you have to leave. But like we got paid to do that stuff and put on disguises and pretend to be people we weren't, all to write up a report and give it to the client in the end. So they had very good security controls, and they always do, but they want to have that test done every couple of years to keep people on their toes. A few more, and I'm happy to talk about any of these in the Q&A, but that one on the bottom left is also just wild that it exists. That's me in the back of a van hacking a client's Wi-Fi network, which I'm at my 21-minute mark, but if people want to hear more about that, I can after Nick's presentation. I don't want to take away from his time. I want to make sure people get this link at the top. That's that certification map. Again, probably the most useful thing in here that you'll see, and the rest really is just storytelling. But thank you guys for listening. Happy to answer any questions you have in the Q&A portion. And otherwise, I will pass it over to Nick, who has just as unique a tale as I do.
So
Thank you.
I have a question.
Yeah, please.
After you learned Linux, how did you feel about C?
I still didn't like C. I still don't like C. I'm not sure that I ever really will. It just didn't sit right with me. Linux made a lot more sense. I'm very fond of the Linux operating system at this point.
Yeah. You open hand.
And I'll pass it over to Nick.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
All right. Hi, everybody. As I was introduced, my name is Nick Pertetuo, and I'm an IT security analyst at OCD Tech. I kind of feel weird, especially going after Jill, my awesome speech, but I feel weird standing up here, excuse me, talking to everybody, trying to give advice about my career and everything, because I kind of still see myself as a college student. Like, I'm 23. And less than a year ago, I was sitting exactly where you guys are now. I was listening to career fair speeches from cybersecurity professionals and data analysts. Like, I suppose I could stand up here and talk about some of the stuff that Jill mentions. I physically broke into a bank last month. I flew down to Orlando in April for a conference on scamming people. I even got to eat at Legal Seafood for the first time in my life, to take a client out to lunch. And they're all great stories. I'd be happy to tell in the Q&A portion, or if you bump into me anytime after this. But the reality of the situation is anything I have to say up here now about my day-to-day job, it's only going to apply to a select few of you, if any. And I kind of want to take the time to talk about, I guess, how I got into this position and something that would apply outside the field of technology in any career. But unfortunately for you guys, that needs a little bit of a backstory first. So I'll tell you, growing up, I was the type of kid that everything kind of came easy to. And I know everyone hates that person, but it was nice for me though, right? Like, I didn't have to study too much. I always had good grades and the teachers always liked me for it. I went into college, 18 years old. I didn't really know what I wanted to do with my life, so I was a communications major. I didn't switch into computer science until the end of my sophomore year when I took an Introduction to Python course. And of course, it came easy to me. The beginning of my junior year starts, and I had this amazing professor who I was just dumbfounded by the stuff that this guy had done. he helped build the internet before the internet. It was back in like 1991. It was something called the Gopher Project. I implore you to Google it. And he even wrote and sold an algorithm to Google. It's just crazy stuff. And if you can't tell, if it's not obvious enough, the guy was like my idol for what I want to do with my career. One day he walks into class and he says that he has some leftover grant money and he wants to put together a team of 3 to 4 students to work on this web application for the healthcare administration department at our school. I had taken maybe 1 or 2 courses of computer science at this point. I knew the basic, like the most basic Python, if-else statements and loops, but I had no real coding experience. But I still wanted to impress the guy. So after class, I walked up and I volunteered to work on the project for free, and he laughed in my face. He laughed. Excuse me. He laughed in my face, but he said he liked my attitude, and he thinks that I'd be able to learn as I contribute to the project. And he'd make sure I got paid for my efforts. So I got the gig. I got put on a team with 3 other students who had much more experience than I, which was nice. They put me in charge of the user interface of the project. I think partially they said the functionality would be more difficult to implement, but I frankly just think they didn't want to work with like HTML and CSS, so they stuck it with me. But regardless, it was nice having people with more experience in the team because I didn't have that. And I kind of leaned on them for the whole project. If something had followed some web tutorial, and if it didn't mesh flawlessly with what was already in place, I'd go to them and be like, oh, what's wrong? And they'd be able to fix it for me. I didn't really follow through with like learning the technology, and I didn't fully take advantage of this awesome opportunity that was given to me. Like I had this golden opportunity where I was getting paid to learn, gain this valuable experience, and in the process I could impress someone with a crazy resume. But like I did it, I got it done, but it was kind of getting by. I didn't really apply my best effort. I didn't put my best foot forward for it. And the whole timeline of this project, it was throughout the semester, and we were supposed to have a prototype done by the end of May. We were able to scrape something together, but we're supposed to present this prototype to the board, and they were going to give us more funding through the summer, so we would be able to continue working on the project. They weren't able to fund 4 students working on the project, only 2. And I think that was eventually cut down to 1, but it didn't really matter because I was never get chosen for it anyways. I didn't have anything specialized to bring to the table. So I had applied to a couple internships throughout that semester, but I didn't give it my all. I was kind of heavily banking on this project, this web application project, to get funded. That was what I wanted to do. And it didn't, and I didn't land any other internships. So I ended up picking up a job at my local car wash down in North Carolina at school. I was made manager there after a little bit, and something they had us do at the car wash was they kind of wanted to like frame it as an upscale place. So they'd have us, the manager, go out and greet the customers as they come in. And I didn't think too much about this until one day my old professor comes through. And by no means, I don't want to get it twisted. I don't want to shame blue collar work. And I definitely don't want to make my old professor out to be a bad guy. But after this opportunity had given me, he shows up and he sees me working there. And I could just tell from the look on his face and the way he asked me, so what are you up to now? Are you doing anything else? And all I could reply was just this. It was kind of a little bit of disappointment there. I felt like I let him down. And this rest of the small talk, conversation, whatever, it's kind of dry and awkward. I helped the man through the wash. And I don't want to over romanticize a perfectly normal interaction, but something kind of clicked in my head that day because I was sitting there quite literally on my hands and knees shining this guy's tires. This guy who gave me a golden opportunity to get this valuable experience and learn, and I could have impressed him, and gosh knows where the connections could have led. it's something that I look back on, I can laugh at it now, because it's so poetic, metaphoric, whatever you want to call it. And I'm sure some of you guys are sitting up there thinking I might have made this BS up just for the sake of this talk. And I swear to you, it's a true story. I'm really glad it happened, partially because I get such great content for a talk like this, but also it was a well-deserved and well-needed wake-up call for me. And again, I don't know if you'll believe me or not, but take what I say at face value. I went home that day, something snapped. I went home that day after work and I sat down, and instead of going out with friends or watching Netflix, turning on the Xbox, I sat down and I took notes on a 2-hour-long crash course of introduction to web development. It was kind of out of spite at this point. It wasn't really going to get me anywhere. The summer had already started, but I felt like I blew that opportunity and I should know this stuff. So the rest of that summer, I was putting in about 35, 40 hours a week at the car wash. And then I come home and I was teaching myself web development. It bleeds into the semester. So it's, I guess, the first semester of my senior year. And I was still working at the car wash. I was a manager. I was putting in very similar hours to what I was doing over the summer. I was probably putting in about 35 hours a week on top of 5 college courses. And I now had this side hustle, I guess, where I was redesigning and creating websites for local businesses because I wanted to monetize my newfound web development skills. And I will be the first to tell you it was such a stupid idea. I was so overworked. I was so burnt out. I couldn't keep up with that. It was a very unhealthy work-life balance. And I ended up failing one of my classes that semester. It was the programming languages class. And because of that, I wasn't able to graduate on time. I ended up having to take an extra semester. The whole silver lining to this, though, was that instead of graduating in May, I now had another summer to maybe land an internship somewhere, build out the resume, and hopefully land a job straight out of school. So I spent the spring semester applying everywhere I could: software engineering, web development. I guess those were the 2 primary focuses for mine because that's what I wanted to do. But I applied to probably over 100 places. I got a few dozen interviews. I went to the second round, even the third round once. Never got any offers. So again, what was supposed to be my final semester of college comes and goes. And then that May, I'm watching all my friends walk at graduation. A few of them got jobs straight out of school, but most of them didn't. And I'd hear very similar things from all of them. There weren't many opportunities out there. I'd hear from my friends, my family trying to comfort me because, again, I'm still working at the car wash. And I don't know, it's something I'm sure many of you can relate to. One of my best friends from my childhood, he went the ROTC route. So he had to enlist right after he graduated. He graduates that May, and his family was throwing a going away party, I guess, because they were going to ship him down to Georgia for basic training, whole 9 yards, whatever it is. And we used to be really close. We hang out all the time. I knew his family well, but I moved down to North Carolina for school, so I hadn't seen him for a while. And I go to this party, and I bump into his older sister while I'm there. And she's telling me all the crazy stuff she does for work. She's saying one of her main job responsibilities is to stalk the social media of these random bank employees to gather intelligence on them. She was looking up the old schematics of these banks to see what entrances to go through, and it was a bunch of stuff I honestly didn't believe her. I thought she was messing with me, but it's stuff like out of Ocean's 11. And then she asked me the dreaded question, right? So what are you up to? And I have to shamefully tell her, okay, I'm studying computer science, but I don't have anything right now. And that made her face light up. She was like, oh my God, we have a bunch of projects that in our company that we'd like to get help on. Send me your resume. I'll try to pass it along. We'll see if we can use you on any of these. I was like, awesome. Absolutely. Let's do it. week or two later, I get set up with an interview for a company called OCD Tech. And I'm sure you guys can see where this is headed to. But that first interview, and I think it was with Jill. I'm not entirely sure, but I remember the interviewer was talking, they were looking over my resume, and you can see on there, it's okay, he has experiences with Python, which is true. I did a lot of Python in college. I also had on there that I used a Linux box for my big grant project that I did, which is true. I had plenty of trouble with it. I didn't quite understand it, but it was on there. And we used SSH to log into it. So yeah, absolutely, I can do those technologies. And they say there's a script they want us to write in Python for a Linux box with SSH. I was like, yeah, I can do that. Sounds like fun. I got the job. And before it even officially started, I spent probably a week or two. I was using my own time off the clock. I researched everything I could about Linux, SSH, any Python modules that could help in like this whole file transfer process, because I was not letting another opportunity pass me by. So that first week, I had 6 weeks on my contract, something like that. First week, I had a working prototype. And then the second week, with a couple tweaks, we have what we currently still use on engagements today. I still had a month left, so they offered me another project. They're like, oh, we have this PowerShell script. We want to automate an Office 365 audit. I was like, yeah, I'm super familiar with that. I can do that. I had never heard of PowerShell in my life, but I was gonna get this done because I'm not losing another opportunity, right? So it took a little bit more time to get off the ground, certainly, because I didn't have that extra week or two of prep on my own time. But eventually, by the end of the summer, I had a good bones of a project where I was going to get this script done. So they offered to extend my internship, and I was putting in about 5 to 10 hours a week while I was finishing up my degree in North Carolina to finish this PowerShell script. I finished it a couple weeks before graduation, and they told me any remaining hours that I wanted to put into, I could start to learn how to hack things. I kind of assumed that they were going to offer me a full-time position right around this time last year. It's about October. But I didn't want to put all my eggs in one basket. I learned from my previous missed opportunity. So the second that summer ended, I've been applying to so many different places. And this time, more widespread, cybersecurity, but still plenty of software engineering, web development, everything. I got an offer for a software engineering job right around the same time that they offered me at OCD Tech. And I was going back and forth on the two, but honestly, once you start working with hackers, like regular coding doesn't have the same appeal as it once did. So I ended up taking the job at OCD Tech. Before I wrap all this up, I just want to make like one thing really crystal clear. I don't want the main takeaways from my whole story to be that you should lie on your resume and then put the extra work in. That's extremely stupid. Don't do that. Both those mistakes made me, I had to maintain this very unhealthy work-life balance that ended up doing so much more harm than good because I had to take an extra semester. College costs money. I had just not happy overall. There's some sweet spot between going above and beyond for everything you do and just doing the bare minimum to get by. And I truly believe that you should strive to live in this range. You'll never regret putting all of your effort into something and it doesn't work out. But it's very difficult to swallow when you have an opportunity, you don't give it your best shot, and it doesn't work out. So there's that what if question in your head. It's a difficult feeling to get over. So I guess my main takeaway I want you guys to have from this story is you should just put your best foot forward and recognize the opportunities, truly recognize the opportunities that are put in front of you. And also take a step out there. I was supposed to do software development That was all I ever wanted to do. And then suddenly I'm hacking things. I broke into a bank earlier. It's just, I don't know. It's crazy where you end up. So that's pretty much all I have for you guys. But thank you.
Thank you. If anybody has questions for Jill or Nick, we still have about 10 minutes left, so I'm sure that people have follow-up questions. It was such an interesting conversation.
Did UNC make you pay for a whole semester to do that last course? I hope not.
I ended up, because I had the extra course, I had to, so I decided, oh, I'm going to pick up a minor. So I took up a couple different classes to get a minor, and then it was still very difficult to maintain my internship with OCD Tech and these minor classes or something. I was like digital art. I didn't really want to do that. So I ended up taking these digital art classes, didn't get a minor, and yes, I paid an extra semester. So I was gonna have to do it either way. Just like, all right.
Sorry, I just came in. I missed everything. But did you repeat? No. I guess I'm curious about the opportunities in this sector, specifically hacking, ethical hacking, in the public sector as opposed to private, or is it mainly opportunities in the private sector and not so much in the public sector?
There's definitely opportunity in both. If you're interested in getting started in either, the best way, there's no best way, honestly, but I would suggest looking into bug bounty programs. There are websites out there where companies can like post themselves and invite people to try and hack them. And if you can do it, they pay you. They actually give you money to try and find vulnerabilities. It's difficult, but it's real work, and it's you'll get legitimate experience out of it. It's hard to jump right into, and you would want to read other people's hacking attempts first and see what works before trying it. But that's one way to jump straight into any sort of hacking attempt. Look into certifications. Somewhere in the middle of my presentation, I had a big chart that I'm sure the link can be provided. Figure out exactly what path in security you want to pursue and just look at the requirements for those certifications and what they teach you, and either start doing some Googling on your own or actually enroll in a course is probably the best way. And from there, it's not really a matter of private or public. It's just if you have the experience and there are openings, you're going to be a valuable asset to any team that needs it, really.
And I guess something just to tack on the end of that, a lot of my training when they told me just go learn to hack things, there's some websites out there, just completely free websites like Hack the Box,
Yep.
Hack Tricks.
Yep.
There's a bunch of them out there. If you Google it, you'll find them, but they provide like labs basically where they say, okay, here's this box, you can start it up, log into it, and then they'll give you a walkthrough, but I recommend trying to do it on your own. And then if you get stuck, look at the walkthrough. But that's how I started. So
what do you recommend for students, like skills? What you need to learn for like Linux and stuff? Like what do you say? You should,
Yeah.
you should need to know this. Like
the biggest thing when I was like learning, and even now, you need to be comfortable in a Linux terminal.
Yeah.
Like that's above all else. If you can navigate Linux, that's the first step, becoming a hacker.
It's definitely a big one. A lot of pen testing and hacking tools are designed to run on a Linux system, straight out of Bash or however else they may be written. But if you start pen testing, there's a Linux operating system called Kali Linux, and it's built with pen testing tools embedded into it, and that's pretty much the go-to for hackers and pen testers. It's so ready to go that you'll need to know the basics of a Linux system to navigate it. But aside from that, it's not any one specific skill. You definitely have to have an aptitude for the technical side of things. But a programming language is helpful, but not a requirement. You can be a hacker without knowing how to code. Then from there, it's just, problem solving.
I think you're getting chat room
Yes,
requests.
you got, I
Oh,
can
wow.
see it right here. It's from Julie Roy.
Sure.
She's asking, how far from this field would game programmer be? Oh. Says, how far from this field would game programmer be?
Very. I could not go from this to game development with the experience I have in cybersecurity. You work on a computer, but that's probably the only similarity. Python might get me a little bit of the way, but I would need to know a game engine to be able to develop a video game, honestly, which I don't. I learned the very, very basics of Unity when I taught myself, but cybersecurity is such a specialized field, especially depending on what exactly you're doing in cybersecurity, that I couldn't directly translate that to game dev, I don't think.
And I'll also add to that, my extra semester, yes, the classes I took, one of them was game development. I was working in Unity, and I had to drop that course because it was so different than what I was doing. So yeah, very far away. Reverse programmer hacker.
Yeah, she actually said, I mean in reverse, programmer to hacker.
Oh, I'm sorry. So knowing a programming language and how to code is like a solid plus to being in the hacking field. From there, you're obviously a technical person at that point and you know the logic behind coding. It's a matter of learning the hacking methodology, really. How do you conduct a pen test step by step? Where do you start? What comes after? You would need to know it's networking. So yeah, if you mean both like in-person networking and actually learning networks, those are both correct. Yeah, from there it's really just growing what you know, which I know is kind of a vague generic answer, but programmer to hacker is certainly doable. You just have to kind of fine tune your direction into learning. You're welcome.
I mean, that's kind of
How
what
to be a
we
hacker.
do,
Yeah,
is
honestly.
we got our foot in the door with programming opportunity, but transition to hacking. And I think
Yes.
the technical mindset is something that translates very well. Like she
Yeah.
said, you don't need programming experience to be a hacker, but having that problem solving brain of debugging code and knowing just how iteratively things work, the step-by-step process, it does translate well. So
I just want to add one point because our program here, we offer cybersecurity associate degree. It's associate degree. It's the first 2 years of college.
Yeah.
Therefore, it is more focused on defense than offense. So, yeah. So, which is why we do not offer ethical hacking course as part of the program. But I could see that is something that excites students. However, I just want to mention that it is important to learn the fundamentals,
Yeah.
as you both just said, before you can step into if hacking is what excites you or whatever, high level type of,
Definitely.
yeah.
It's very hard to jump straight into the deep end, and you're gonna have a hard time if that's the way you choose to do things.
Yeah.
Even it's almost 2, I'm sorry. Even the course I took in New York it's baby steps. They teach you the very beginnings and then work your way up over the week.
Yes.
It's always about learning the basics.
Exactly.
and something to my first 4 or 5 months at the company, I was not doing pen tests. I was learning more about hacking, but I was also doing a lot of, we have clients that we do like consulting with, and it's more on the defensive end. It's like, okay, you're looking through these logs, you're looking through the scans, you get to see the other side of it. I think that's very helpful too, when you get onto the offensive end, like, okay, how does this come across if you're trying to hide your traffic? Or it definitely is another thing that the background helps.
Thank you so much. We really hope that you come again.
We'd love to. Thanks for having us. Fun.
We enjoyed this very much, but I really hope you can come again and talk to our students. I'm
Yeah, of
sure
course.
they are going to be thrilled.
Thank you.
Guys.
Thank you.
so
Thank you.
much.
Thank you.